Hello, everybody. This is Jake Senziano, host of Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, I'm doing good, bro. How you doing?
Always making it happen, big man. Guys, this is where we would normally plug something to pay the bills. Now for our listeners, we only showcase products and services that we use or approve of in our own business. Gang, today we have a big announcement. Staying true to our proven framework, buy right, manage right, and finance right, we now have a finance right solution available for you. This past Monday, we launched Rand Capital, your one-stop shop for all your multifamily financing needs. Gino, tell the listeners about Rand Capital.
The last 5 years have been quite a ride. From 25 units to over 1,200, we've learned how important it is to get your financing right. Along the way, we've unlocked some creative sources of capital to mitigate the risk on our deals while creating even stronger returns. Jake and I got to thinking, how can we help other investors get the same terms that we've been able to negotiate over the years? This is why we wrote the book. This is why we have the podcast. It's been our mission to help investors do more deals, do better deals, and ultimately become financially free. Rand Capital is the financing solution to help you secure the best debt for each deal that you do. Whether you're brand new or have been in the business for a long time, we're here to help.
So go to our website, randcapllc.com, to start the conversation today. Even if you don't have a deal on the line, let's jump on a call. Again, that's randcapllc.com. We look forward to crossing the finish line with you on your next deal. Today's special, we got Richard C. Wilson. Richard is the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Single Family Office, and recently released another book called How to Start a Family Office. Bottom line, Richard helps $100 million net worth families create and manage their single family offices. So without further ado, Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jake.
Hey, pleasure to have you here. So for the folks out there that don't know, please explain, to everyone out there what a family office is and how you got into this space.
Sure. A family office is a full balance sheet wealth solution for someone who's ultra wealthy. And there's only two main types. There's a multifamily office that might serve 10 clients or 50 clients or more. And then there's a single family office, which would just be for one family or one individual. But in either case, the point is to be more holistic, more 360 degree, more complete wealth management solution that's managed for the family versus them having to manage their CPA separately, then their wealth manager, then their insurance agent, then their philanthropy, then their trust and estate planning, to bring that all in and have a central management system for it.
Wow, my head's starting to hurt.
He said multifamily, but he's not talking about our kind of multifamily.
Confusing, huh? Yeah, that is confusing.
Well, how did you get into it, Richard? How did your path lead to this?
Yeah, at the beginning, I was just working in risk consulting for publicly traded companies, and then moved over to capital placement for hedge funds and fund managers. And while doing that, I found that wealth management firms on average didn't have accredited investors for a high percentage of their base of clients, while institutions wouldn't invest in a hedge fund manager with less than a couple $100 million, or a real estate manager with less than a couple $100 million of assets. And so I found that family offices only serving the ultra wealthy, they're always going to have accredited investors that they're serving as a wealth management firm. And I found that they're more creative and entrepreneurial, as you're usually first gen, second gen families. So they relate to entrepreneurs and they're willing to be flexible on making a deal work sometimes.
I have a question here. You written down, why do they matter, family offices?
So they matter because the more that the ultra wealthy hear that they exist, the more that they're wanted. Like, who would not want a holistic solution managing all the financial chaos in their life when you can have that versus not? And the reason why it's so important is that if you're worth $100 million and you make a 1% mistake because you sell an asset a week too late, or you don't file some paperwork, or you get dinged by some sort of regulator or IRS or something on something small, and it's just a 1% ding, it's $1 million. So that little mistake that could have been prevented just by having somebody watching your balance sheet and orchestrating all the moving parts, not only the defense could pay for the whole cost of having the family office, but then what you do offensively in terms of investing and making progress where you made your money in the first place, most likely, should be able to, you can do that with more focus if your back house is all in order.
Mm-hmm. Would you be able to give us like a blueprint or framework of how a family office works, how they serve these wealthy clients?
Yeah, for sure. We're setting up two right now. One is for a $300 million family One is for a $200 million family. And with both of them, they had a liquidity event in the last 2 to 3 years. And both of them, they're setting up systems where they have estate planner, a high-end accounting firm creating their basically financial statements as well as their back office accounting. But then most importantly, they look at their investment portfolio, and because they're controlling entrepreneurs at heart, they say, okay, well, let's break it up into 3 buckets. And they typically have 1 bucket of diversified assets, like traditional wealth management type mindset of playing all defense, and they outsource all of that. They don't try to do it themselves unless they made their money in the stock market. The second bucket is cash flowing commercial real estate, like a multifamily property, for example. And in that one, they could go to independent sponsors or choose things deal by deal that they're high conviction on. So it's a little bit more control than the diversified bucket, a little bit more aggressive. They're hoping to get not a 6 to 9% return, but hopefully from the commercial real estate, more of a 8 to 12 or 10 to 20%. And then the third bucket is really where they made their money. We're helping one family invest back into technology companies, or helping another family invest back into manufacturing companies. So that's really have the maximum control and can make maximum gains. And they're playing less defense in that area and more offense.
So how does multifamily or real estate specifically fall into one of these buckets, and how do you help them invest in real estate?
Sure. Well, the commercial real estate cash flowing bucket is the one that it squarely falls into. And I just find that a lot of families understand how multifamily works on a basic level. So they feel like they can get their arms around it. They may not have leased a warehouse themselves, or, or dealt with data centers themselves, et cetera. But I'd find that multifamily and self-storage are the two, with office being third, the most popular assets that families are going into. And typically, families will go through an independent sponsor to make things easier and leverage them. But some families will go direct to a property, or want to be a co-GP with a multifamily sponsor, or JV with them, or be a seed anchor investor, or negotiate special fees for being a big investor in each one of the sponsors' deals.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a multifamily investor. I need to tap new capital. Can you give me some recommendations on how to raise capital and how to get in front of these family offices?
Sure. The best recommendation, I think, would be to see where you are geographically and figure out where the family offices are congregating in your local area. Mm-hmm. And just to be there, have your office there, live there, find something you're passionate about or have fun doing, and get involved in that, but get involved with the version that would pre-screen people for being worth $10 million plus. So if you're raising capital, they might not need to have a formalized family office, but if they're worth 40 million, 50 million, they could write the check that you're looking for, whether or not it's formally set up. I also would try to think a lot about your background and what investors are looking for. I know a lot of your listeners are multifamily, for example, but there's many different ways to raise capital for multifamily. And if you find that the types of investors you have access to are doctors who just want a very conservative investment, it could be different than if you're showing multifamily properties to professional athletes or to business owners locally. Those are all different types of like default mental mindsets that are most likely to be in place. Mm-hmm. So you could structure things with, a debt note, or taking 50% carry, or having an 8% versus a 12% hurdle. I mean, I know one multifamily sponsor that has a 6% pref and takes 50% profits. And they say that's industry standard. And then I know one that takes a 8% or 8% pref, and they take just 20% profits. So I think that there's many options to customize for the investors you have access to, and everything you do should be dialed in to what those investors are really wanting, so that you're really speaking to them.
So what other mistakes do you normally see people doing when they raise capital? Because that's definitely one mistake, when you don't assess the investor and his needs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of dialed in on that, because probably number one mistake is people rushing around. Like, we have a 1,000-person event next week through the Family Office Club. We're always hosting investor summits and workshops, and inevitably there'll be people there that are running around with their deal. And they're going to say, Richard, I've got like the deal of a lifetime here. You've never seen a better multifamily deal. And they're going around and and what I found is that investors, when that happens, they kind of get on their heels. They're kind of like, well, who are you? Like, this deal doesn't matter at all if I don't know who you are. And the context of it, like, what firm are you with? Oh, you're not with a firm. some daisy chain deal that probably doesn't even exist in the real world or
Every
something.
deal in Atlanta.
That's
right
what they're thinking. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, they just smell amateur hour when the guy's sweating, running around, shaking every person's hand and being ultra aggressive. Families want people that are high conviction.
You do that, right? Yeah, you go back to
Exactly.
college.
Just don't
it
do
doesn't
that.
work like that.
It doesn't work like that. Yeah. The opposite will occur. Yeah. So, but yeah, I just think that family offices want to work with people they know and trust, obviously, that they think add genuine value, that are a leader in their space. And if you're a leader in your space, you don't need to rush around and get 100 business cards. Like, people will recognize your expertise over time because of the value, like, for example, that you guys provide here on the podcast, the Jake and Gino podcast, and with Wheelbarrow Profits. I mean, the value that just kind of resonates with people because of everything you're doing in your life makes it so in no scenario would you be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And I think that, like, family offices repel from that type, and they're attracted to people who are very long-term minded.
How else do you recommend hunting down new investors other than don't run around your business cards, don't look like a chicken without a head, don't be sweating all over the place? Give us some tips on, hey, I'm looking for investors. I've got the deal of the century, and it's not in Atlanta, and it's not a daisy chain. Give me some tips.
Right. Yeah. So my recommendation for hunting down investors is really don't. Like, just get it out of your brain that you need to hunt down investors and figure out how to attract them. You rattle off a couple of books we had written before. One we're coming out with right now is called Centimillionaire Migraines. And it's how to take the top 6 headaches of my $100 million net worth clients and turn them into points of strategic advantage. The whole point of that is to get inside their brain and be where they are and be inside those headaches and solve them for them to earn a relationship. Just like you guys are doing with this podcast with multifamily sponsors or investors. And just like someone might do by putting on a free workshop on how to invest in multifamily in their local city. And it might only have 25 people a month showing up for those workshops, but some people are going to hear the depth of your knowledge on that topic and say, wow, I'm just going to have Jake and Gino do this for me. This sounds like another full-time job. And a percentage will try to do it themselves, fail, and come back and maybe hire you guys later to manage their capital, et cetera. But my point is, if you can be where people are looking and be in the stream of demand instead of hunting them down, it's a superior use of energy. It's the equivalent of going to a lake and trying to spear a fish by walking around in the water versus finding the waterfall and having the fish jump towards you. Mm-hmm. So if you manage a local, philanthropic group, or if you're in the local Porsche club, or if you live in a community that's full of family offices, you're positioned at the waterfall. Or if you're solving the headaches of, dentists who own their own practice and you have access to an association full of them, then you've dialed it in and you're able to really connect and resonate with those people. So I just think that positioning and then working that position, you still have to be proactive, is just the right mindset to have when raising capital versus trying to hunt people down. Because the traditional approach is like dial for dollars, cold call, go to some networking events, try to reach out. And you really want people to be reaching out to you because of your position.
So you're actually trying to posture yourself, and you're trying to actually use inbound marketing. We're putting stuff out and it's coming inbound, because when somebody reaches out to you, there's a lot more power. There's a lot more, emphasis because they're reaching out to you. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think it's more than just trying. I mean, we've accrued $12 million in revenue by doing it, for sure. It's working. And our latest clients that are all over $100 million all cold called and emailed us. They heard us on the podcast. They saw our website and called us. They read the book on Amazon and called us. So I think a lot of people think like, oh, I don't know if that works, or that takes some time. But I find that people that always try to go for the shortcut, like, oh, I don't have time for that. I'm just going to give me someone to call. Give me a meeting set up. I'll close someone. That seems like the shortest path in people's brains. But to get to 50 million or 100 million in assets, it's actually the longer path, because you don't build any trust or understanding in the space or any position. So what appears to be the longer path is actually the shorter path to managing $100 million of client assets, I found.
So I know everybody on the podcast is probably drooling when they hear 50 million, 100 million, but I know from experience that they're difficult to deal with. So give me some difficulties dealing with high net worth individuals, and I'm sure they're demanding of your time. And so let's dive through.
Sure. One I've gotten used to is that many people think they're cheap, but really they just really value the exchange. It's the exchange of value has to be genuine. So it's like a triathlete going to a party on the weekend or a barbecue, and someone's like, oh, why don't you have a third, fourth, and fifth piece of pizza? You look like you're in perfect shape. You can afford to eat it. Go crazy. Well, it's the same thing with someone worth $100 million. Like, yeah, they could spend $1 million on their CEO, but, you know, they would be kind of violating their own principles of, you know, paying for what something's worth and getting good value. The other thing that's a big challenge is that some of these people are just so busy. It's why they need a family office if they don't have one formally set up yet. And they're just high action entrepreneurs. And a lot of them, just getting them tied down to, you know, a meeting, even when you're on a retainer with them, even when they're invested in your fund, you might have a hard time getting their attention, even though they've already invested $1 million or $2 million in you. If they haven't formalized their team around them, it can be pretty difficult just getting their attention on things because they're just very busy.
Can you talk about the first family office you set up? I mean, how did you go about that? How did you get the idea to do that? And, you know, some pain points and maybe some tips if somebody wants to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, sure. So basically at the beginning, it was writing a book for Wiley and family offices, speaking at a couple hundred events in 14 countries, and having our website, like a blog on the topic. And because of doing that for 3 to 4 years, we started learning so much that people would start asking us questions like, oh, well, who would you use for software for setting up a family office? Or who would you use for hiring a CIO? Or, oh, do you know anyone I could hire as a CEO? Or how are people structuring their direct investments? Because now that's a trend. And they would ask us all these questions. So after answering several hundred of those questions and knowing some of the best service providers in the space, because we were speaking at all the industry events, we started telling people like, oh, well, we could help you set up your family office. And we just didn't charge them anything at the beginning. And it would say, oh, well, come speak at our event and let's have coffee. Let's have lunch once a quarter and we'll just help you with what you're stuck on. So it kind of evolved that way. And then after about 5 years running the business, so probably 6 years ago, we started formally setting up family offices for people for consulting fees or being put on retainer, et cetera. And, you know, the first formal client was really someone who really just needed a few solution providers and they needed a direct investment program. They were happy with their wealth manager. Just the direct investment side was a complete mess. So with that one, we helped them. And we do this with many clients where we'll identify a niche where they probably should be investing for their direct investment allocation, a good percentage of their energy and money. And then we'll help them create a database of all the possible companies or assets they could buy, like 300, 500 potential acquisitions. And then I'll get emails out to them, get on the phone with 50 of them, and narrow it down to 3 to 5 investable, you know, opportunities and help them organize it that way. Because otherwise they're looking at a healthcare startup and a nonprofit, you know, payment processor and like, you know, a bunch of things that are seemingly random because those are the deals that found them versus saying like, what is your brain better at than anything else in the world or better than anyone else in the world? And let's figure out how to deploy that in a way that you would enjoy and make a lot of money at and also be passionate about. And let's just do like only that. But the reality is, even when you say only that with these guys, it's still 80%. That's like the best hope. But you have to say, let's only do that so that they'll say no to most stuff, at least. That's not that.
Mm-hmm. What do you love about the business?
For me, I love that I'm just I'm like working every day with the winners of the game of capitalism. You know, none of these guys won the lottery. They're not professional athletes. Almost none of my clients inherited their money. So they're just really smart business people, and just hearing their wealth creation story and seeing how they act daily and how much they get done every day, I think it just allows me to constantly be pulling things that is like a mental construct or a model and using it for myself. And then I recommend it to clients. Once I know that it's worked for my client and myself, then I try to deploy it to the other clients. There's some like cross-pollination between these clients that I work with.
And what do you not like about the business?
Probably the travel. I mean, the game I set up for myself is running these conferences and investor summits. And, you know, I'll be in 30 different cities next year, which means 60 flights, not 30 different cities, 30 different trips to different cities. So 60 flights. And when I've got 3 young kids at home, you know, I wish everybody would just like get out of the cold states of the United States and move down to warm places with low taxes and make travel easier. Maybe that'll happen one day, but yeah, that's probably the worst part.
It seems to be some kind of migration taking place like that anyways. So it may be happening sooner than you think.
Yeah, I hope so.
That's great. Well, Mr. Stenziano perked up over there because that's what his journey was 7 years ago, and I followed suit a year and a half ago. So
nice.
That's
welcome.
Great. Yeah, it's awesome. Let me tell you. We talked on the phone a bit about, the 3 trust curves. Someone needs to move up to close an investor. Can you just talk about those?
Yeah. So I just think it's good to be cognizant that like no one is going to invest typically without moving up these 3 curves of trust in the individual, the team, the industry overall or the ecosystem, and then the individual asset. And so if somebody knows you very, very well, it might be easier to raise capital even though they don't know multifamily and they don't know your deal on 8th Street. But if they were your college roommate and they know they still trust you well enough, they might invest anyways. Usually though, you need to be, after you get past that part, you really have to be going into a meeting thinking, does this person know the asset? Do they live around the corner? And that's the play because the trust is so high there. I just need to teach them what the multifamily industry is all about. And I need to teach them about me and my team and move them up those 2 trust curves. They're already up the curve of being around the corner to the asset. Mm-hmm. Or is this guy an independent sponsor doing multifamily deals all day long? He knows the industry like the back of his hand, and we need to focus on us first and building big credibility with us. And then as a next step, go to the property on 8th Street and get him up that curve. But I would, as a default, I would always build the team individual credibility before the other components. And I would always look to how can you go to people that are at least up one of those curves already. If you're going to some guy who doesn't know you, doesn't know multifamily, doesn't know your property on 8th Street, that's just death. You need to go to someone who you have some relationship with, or they are on the cap table for the asset right now and they want to stay on it, or they're local to the asset at least, so they could go look at it easily, or they know the industry at least. If you're starting from 0 on all 3, I wouldn't even take the meeting unless they're cold calling you because of their interest. Then of course I would, but I wouldn't pursue a lead or pursue a group of leads that have like no relation to those 3 trust curves.
So how do you get, we have this issue, Jake and Gino, with our education. People might not know us. We put together a ton of due diligence documents. We put together videos. We put together podcasts. We put together articles. We send them our best-selling book. What do you put together to put for like a pitch book or some type of, we have our own credibility book also, lists our assets. It's a business plan. Do you have any other tips to get documents together for investors?
Yeah, for sure. And we've got 3 full-time people on our team, and that's all they do. We run a website called pitchdecks.com that has a bunch of examples of materials there. But what we found is a whiteboard explainer video, the 1-pager, the pitch deck, educational materials are really key. A lot of people get overwhelmed thinking about putting together educational materials, but they can stack on top of each other. Blog posts turn into white papers turn into books. So it's not as hard as people think. And I like Gary V's saying to document instead of getting like you have to create every day. Just think about documenting your journey as you go. But the most important thing I could say about all of that, because we do, we've got fancy graphic designers and whiteboard videos and stuff. But the most important thing is just knowing that the pitch deck doesn't matter at all if you don't have a 1-pager that gets them the main idea at a 10,000 foot level quickly. Because the more busy, sophisticated the investor, the less time they have to go through 35 pages to figure out why do I care as an investor? Why is this different than the other 500 independent sponsors out there doing multifamily? And if you believe that the 1-pager is just as important, if not more important, than the pitch deck, then it goes in saying that the 1-liner, the 1 sentence on your firm is even more important than the 1-pager, because maybe no one's going to open that 1-pager if you don't have a 1 sentence for a voicemail, for an email. It's really excellent. And if you haven't already gotten too embedded with the brand, I think as well, the ultimate is to have the brand designed so that just by reading your brand name, people not only know what you do, but they want to work with you. That's the highest level of positioning, is that just by reading your brand name, they're like, oh, we should meet. Lots of people, you read their brand name, you don't know what they do. You try to figure out what they're doing in their materials. They don't even have a 1-liner, not even a poorly constructed one. Half the people out there don't have a 1-pager. And so you're like, oh my God, what's going on here? It's like, it's just a form of laziness because you're not doing the homework for the investor. You should know your investor, know your competitors, and tell them why you're relevant on planet Earth to the investors you're targeting. Otherwise, it's just kind of sloppy. Even though you might still get investors, and you might have to date, if you're listening to this and you don't have these things, it's just, you could have these things sweating for you in the marketplace versus not.
So we are Jake and Gino, the mom and pop apartment kings, right, Mr. Stenziano? They know who we are. They know what we invest in. They know we're not in A assets. We are assets, C2B assets. So, that's from trial and error. That's from learning. So I totally agree with everything you
Right.
said. Let me ask you, where do you
Cool.
see the future of family offices going?
I mean, I think it's going to be massive. Right now in the United States, most people who are ultra wealthy have no idea what a family office is. I spoke to a billionaire in Manhattan who made his money in real estate, and he had no idea what a family office was. And outside of Western Europe and the United States, the term is very new, and it's just getting started globally. So I really think the industry is going to be 3 to 5 times as big in just 10 years, and it's just going to continue to thrive. Every time the market goes down, family offices step in and have creative lending, bridge lending, acquire assets at the bottom and increase their net worth and increase the benefits of having a family office. You can execute on such opportunities. So, while other people might be like, oh, the market's going down, it might actually just continue to help propel the family office space.
But why do you think that's so here? Why is it so not known here and everywhere else it is?
No, I don't think it's really known anywhere. I mean, in the United States, it's known better than anywhere else. In London, places like Zurich, it's relatively well known, Monaco. But in lots of places, people just don't know that the option exists, and they're managed by their private banker or wealth manager who might not be motivated to tell them. There's a lot of noise out there in the world. So even if you read the Wall Street Journal every day, you might miss something on Cohen or, Soros setting up his own family office or something like that. So part of it is just the terminology being used by the media enough that people understand the basics. And then when they become ultra wealthy, having that information get to them at the right point in time. So we're trying to grow the space as fast as we can, and push education out there, because the bigger the industry is, I think the better we'll be doing. So we're just trying to always push that.
Mr. Stenziano, any questions?
Yeah, I mean, if you could just, what's the fee structure like for a family office?
So a multifamily office will charge, anywhere from 50 basis points up to, over 1%, depending on what's included in the solution. For a single family office, lots of families have a mindset of, we want to keep our internal costs below 1% or below 75 basis points. But honestly, what the family office is doing for you is much more important. Does that include everything? And now you don't need to outsource as much. And if that makes sense, that could lower your total costs. Or, what type of life do you want to live? Do you want to just work 2 hours a week, or do you want to work 60 hours a week investing back into your industry? You're going to need a completely different family office solution based on what your goals are. So the very first thing we do is create go through 50 questions, our 50 kickoff questions, and we create a direction for the family to go in, based on what they're telling us, so that their whole team sees the documented values, objectives, vision, and has kind of an investment policy statement that they're working by.
And then, basically you have, yourself and your group at the top, and then you're essentially kind of like the GC at that point. You're pulling in the accounting team, you're pulling in these different investment vehicles for them, and it all kind of trees down from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, for some single family offices, we'll help run the single family office after it's set up. Some are larger; they need to hire a full-time team, and it's not going to be local to where we are. Some would like to hire a multifamily office for part of their portfolio and just keep us in place to help oversee the direct investments. And that's probably the most common.
The multifamily kind of gives economies of scales, people linking up and sharing
Right.
resources. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and the diversified bucket of wealth is usually best managed by a private banker or multifamily office, where the direct investments are almost always better managed by someone who's really specialized in doing that, or by the family themselves with the right processes in place.
Cool. So you really interesting stuff that you're saying, because you're able to spend, time with very high level folks. What would you say is your best habit for success, seeing what you've seen and something that you do on a daily or weekly basis?
For me, I think it's just constantly making sure that everything is integrated. So for me, the word integrity is the most important thing that we're always trying to apply. It's our number one value in the company. And if there's a team member not well integrated, if there is something in my personal life that's not integrated with what I need to be doing in my business life, if where we're located is not in line with what's helping us, etc., then I think just constantly reviewing that and taking things out of the picture that are not in line with where we're trying to go is one of the most important things. And I help my clients with that as well. If they made their money in auto parts manufacturing and they're getting distracted by all these deals of biotech and healthcare, and they're getting stressed out about their accounting because their accountant is horrible, et cetera, then we try to remove things from the picture that are just distracting them from what should be the main thing going on for them. So I don't know if it's so much of a habit, but kind of like a mindset, and trying to, I guess, get into the habit of just like weeding out the things that are just in the path and slowing you down.
I think they call that stop doing shit that you hate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
So you're around a lot of high net worth and high level individuals. What habits do you see them, I guess, portraying, whether it's, patience, persistence, whether it's getting up in the morning, meditating? What do you see, recurring?
I see like fast action, like quick implementation. They always seem to be getting a lot of things done per day, like a lot of actions per day. They're usually very good negotiators, and they're pretty good poker face sometimes as well. They're good information gatherers and quickly get up the learning curves on stuff and figure out who's the best person to trust on a decision. And they're pretty good at using counterparties to get things done for them, like using an independent sponsor. They might have a creative approach that's good for the sponsor, good for them. And now they don't have to manage the properties directly. They have a very motivated independent sponsor who's going to be doing that, because that's what they were already doing all day long before they met them.
But that's why they get a lot of stuff done, because they hire right. They don't mind paying for that help, and they don't mind paying for that information. And they can, I don't want to say outsource, because they're always overlooking something. But if you can do 3 things and have 3 different people doing it for you instead of yourself doing one thing, I think it's more efficient. I think you're spreading out the work. I think you're making more money in the long run. So that makes total sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Any book recommendations? Anything you've read recently that you think is something you want to push out there?
Yeah, I mean, one of my mentors is Dan Sullivan, and he has a book called the ABC Model, which just helps you focus on your unique ability as a person, what you're excellent and passionate on. Kind of like Jim Collins, hedgehog strategy of things that match your DNA, could make you a lot of money, and that you could be the best at in the world type idea. But I just find this relevant whether you're an independent sponsor or an investor, because really as an investor, you should, carve things out and only be doing what you're best at as an investor or as someone who's raising capital. I think it applies on both sides.
So the folks listening to this, many of them own multifamily properties. Many of them, syndicate deals. Just it's everything multifamily. If there was an event, it sounds like you get on the road a lot. You go to a lot of different events. If there was one event that the folks should look out for this year coming up, or something for the folks that are looking to raise money, what would that be?
I honestly don't know of one event. Let me just rattle off a couple that I found are very high quality. I've only heard great things about YPO. I'm in Dan Sullivan's Game Changer program, and it's been pretty awesome in terms of quality of networking with really just high quality business people. Obviously, here at the Family Office Club, we run events. So I'm a bit biased. But besides Strategic Coach and a few speaking invites, I really just attend my own events, because we do 23 of them a year, and that's almost enough for one human being to go to for conferences.
Plenty.
So that's my excuse for pumping my own event as my answer to your question. I really don't have time to go to too many other people's events these days because of our own, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you if they're interested in one of your events or taking the next step?
Sure. If you want to check out the events, the calendar for them is at familyoffices.com. And we're going to have 100 investors on stage next week for the Family Office Super Summit, and 1,000 people in the room. But our whole business model, just like you, is just to give away 100 times more value than we ever charge people for in the real world. So if somebody is raising capital, capitalraising.com, there's a free book there that you can get on the 5 steps to position yourself to raise capital. And again, on familyoffices.com, there's a free book on family offices as well. If you're just getting started in the space, I'd recommend, one of those 2 books.
G-Dead, what else you got?
My head's still hurting here. So
why is your head hurting, man?
It's something that, we haven't really dealt with before, which is great. We've never really learned about family offices. Like Richard said, it's not something that's really well spoken about. It's great because it's like the 1%. So I think people should jump on his website, really learn about the space. I would definitely attend one of his events just to see how people raise capital, just to see how you can talk to an investor, how you can sound intelligent talking to an investor. And I always pump people and tell them they need to go to events. So you need to go to at least 1 or 2 events a year at the minimum. So this sounds like an amazing event to go to. So
Richard, I'm envisioning the Catalina wine mixer here. Is that about right or what?
It's a bit different. I mean, we're kind of the Netflix of investment events. You can come to our events and pay the $1,000, but what we found is if we charge a $300 a month subscription, you can stop anytime and you get access to all 23 events, and people come to usually 1 per quarter. And when you bring up the type of event, half of our events are intensive boot camp workshops, and we teach people brick by brick, 150 slides on how to raise capital. And the other half are investor summits, where there's 30 to 100 investors on stage telling you what they want to invest in, how they like to invest. And then afterwards, people, we've got cocktails, catered lunch, catered breakfast, and afterwards people get together their own dinners. And, some of them stay out too late and come in late the next day to the conference because they had too much fun during the annual event or something. But that, there is a lot of networking going on. That's the whole point, of coming.
That's
cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Gino. Take care.
Take care.